Professor Emeritus Dato Dr. Osman bin Bakar, Honorary Fellow of Tun Ghazali Shafi'i Institute for Strategic Leadership UCYP Malaysia, International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization ICIHE Malaysia, Associate Professor Dr. Tan Lee Pin, Deputy Vice Chancellor of Research and Industry Linkages UCYP Malaysia, Associate Professor Dr. Azhar bin Jaafar Al-Aish Ramli, Director of the 6th International Conference on Islam and Higher Education, Deputy Vice Chancellor of Student Development and Society Engagement, Dean of International Institute for Islamic Civilization, Dr. Ismail Swardi Weki, Chairman of Southeast Asia Academic Mobility SEAAM, co-organizer of the 6th International Conference on Islam and Higher Education, Professor Dr. H. Amin Abdullah, Universitas Islam Negeri Sunan Kalijaga, Yogyakarta, Indonesia, Professor Dr. Sukri Langputih, Fatoni University, Thailand, Dr. Nur Ashikin Yusof, University Islam Sultan Sharif Ali, Brunei Darussalam, Deputy Vice Chancellors of UCYP Malaysia, UCYP Management Team, Dean, Head of Departments, Conference Main Sponsor, the Council of Religion of Islam and Malay Custom for the State of Pahang, Malaysia, presenters, participants, committee members, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 6th International Conference on Islam and Higher Education, the 6th ICIHE 2021 with the theme Islam and Hybrid Knowledge. Ladies and gentlemen, in today's conference, we are going to discover the issues, the updates, and the findings on the area of Islam and hybrid knowledge within the context of Islam and higher education. A mild reminder to our respectful viewers and participants, you may leave comments or post questions in the chat box 10 minutes before the session ends. You may ask personally, or I myself shall read the questions from you in the chat box. Ladies and gentlemen, now it is my honor to invite the keynote speaker, Professor Emeritus Dato Dr. Osman bin Bakar from the International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization, ICIHE, Malaysia, with this topic entitled The Philosophy of Interdisciplinary Knowledge. Please welcome, Professor.
Thank you, the moderator. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wa mursalin. Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi and a very good morning to the university, the College University of Eastern Pahang, and I'm not sure that was here, but I would like to say warm greeting to the Vice Chancellor, Professor Emeritus Dato Ahmad Zainuddin, and the Dean of the IIC of the University College of Eastern Pahang. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to give a speech today, the keynote address to you all, the participants of the conference. Now, as has been told, the topic of my presentation is the philosophy of interdisciplinary knowledge. I prepared a few slides to guide my presentation this morning. All right, so that is the topic, the philosophy of interdisciplinary knowledge. All right, and let's go straight to the first slide. But before I discuss this, let me say some introductory words about the topic. I know the main theme of the conference is Islam and hybrid knowledge. While the term is nothing wrong with the term, but I prefer the word interdisciplinary precisely because the term discipline comes from the word discipline, and of course the word discipline here referring to the academic discipline or scientific discipline, basically any organized body of knowledge having certain features, certain objectives, and so on. So basically, that's what the term interdisciplinary is imbued, and of course, the term applies not only to knowledge. We also speak of interdisciplinary research. We speak of interdisciplinary studies. So several other equivalent terms, more or less. I mean, they are interrelated. So, and of course, in using the word interdisciplinary, we are talking very much about what is going on now, the new interest basically in the modern world. But it is important to realize that the issue of interdisciplinarity is the concern of the modern world, of the contemporary world, because after so long, I mean, knowledge has been divided, it has been compartmentalized to smaller and ever smaller parts. All right. The question now is, in a sense, that we have been, it has been so divisive. Knowledge has been so divisive. All right. I mean, we go into very, very detailed branches of knowledge. That in itself is nothing wrong. What is wrong is that the people who are now, in a sense, trapped in the very small discipline know nothing about other disciplines except they only know their own discipline. This is the kind of specialization that is negative. All right, I think this is important. But as I said, this is a problem of the modern academia. This is the problem of the modern world. It was not the problem of other civilizations in the past. The word interdisciplinary knowledge or studies was in the nature of things. For example, in Islamic civilization, they, in a sense, that they were very, very get used to that. In other words, it is something which is accepted as an axiomatic truth, precisely because of that spirit of Tawheed. So anyway, what I'm going to say this morning has something to do with what I have been saying, namely Tawheedic knowledge. Tawheedic knowledge is interdisciplinary, or rather, Tawheedic knowledge breeds, creates interdisciplinary knowledge. And I would another thing before I go into the definition. The idea of interdisciplinary knowledge is related, of course, to another word, which is interrelatedness. Right? Interrelatedness. Interdisciplinarity and interrelatedness are related in the sense that if there is no interrelatedness of things, both in the natural world and in the human world, then the idea of interdisciplinarity doesn't make any sense. Yeah? So the rationale why the concept of interdisciplinary knowledge makes sense, precisely because it is based on the interrelatedness of whether it's natural phenomena or social and civilizational phenomena. All right, because I don't have much time really to speak this morning, let me just now go to the slides. Let me first define what I mean by interdisciplinary knowledge. Of course, in the past, there was no definition. People don't define, because I said it was too obvious. The truth of interdisciplinarity is very obvious, right? We in our time were having some problems with the concept, but I said people in the past, especially in Islamic civilization, since the organizers of this conference is, those concerned with Islamic civilization, with integrated knowledge, should bear that in mind. All right? So basically, I'm defining something which is well known, especially before. So what is interdisciplinary knowledge? I define it, it's very, very simple actually. Interdisciplinary knowledge is a domain of study in which ideas from two or more scientific disciplines, two or more branches of knowledge interact or are made to interact. For what purpose? To produce new ideas and conceptual relations that may even lead to the creation of a new discipline. Right? Starting with a particular interdisciplinary study, well, the path before us, the path in front of us is that we are going into a broader and broader field of study, and in the process, we'll be creating a new field of study, new discipline. All right. I think that's basically my definitions. The important thing here is that there are two or more branches of knowledge, two or more disciplines, and each discipline has ideas, concepts, and theories even, and then we try to kind of to merge or to see what sort of relation we have, and then from there we create something new. Yeah. In other words, interdisciplinarity is a kind of a condition in knowledge that will lead us to broader knowledge. In other words, to the growth of knowledge. So, growth of knowledge presupposes the idea of interdisciplinarity. Now, let's give some examples. I mean, we know and something has been going on, but basically we don't emphasize that idea of interdisciplinarity. All examples of interdisciplinary knowledge, all right, simple. So biology. You're studying biology for a long time. In other words, biology is a good traditional example of interdisciplinary knowledge. What are the different disciplines, all right, that in a sense underlie the creation of biology? Well, basically because of the commonality of all living organisms, first of all, the physical dimension, and then the chemical dimension. Of course, in the case of modern biology, evolutionary biology, there is own assumptions about the nature. There are chemical. In other words, there are ideas from chemistry. There are ideas from physics. There are ideas, mainly these two, that create botany, that creates then of course the biology in general. Then the optics. Optics is a good example of interdisciplinary knowledge that was invented in Islam. That was created by Muslim scientists. particularly, of course, the founder was Ibn al-Haytham, right? So he, in a sense, unified. He created a synthesis of the mathematical theory of light and the physical. So that's a very good example. In other words, the study of light in Islam expanded after Ibn Haytham synthesized the discipline of mathematics and the discipline of physics. But the resulting discipline was treated by Al-Farabi as a branch of mathematics, because in the beginning there was more mathematics, there was more mathematical content compared to the physical content. For that reason, optics was treated as a branch of mathematics. An example, and of course, economics. Yeah? So economics, yes, in our period, it is the problem we have is because there's the tendency to reduce reality to is basically when you have mixed reality, yeah, to is the lowest common denominator, which is something physical, something that can be measured. Right? But economics, I mean, economics involves several disciplines, right? It involves politics, it involves the science, it involves technology, it involves basically the human sciences. So it's much more complex. Economics, if you are really to consider it as an interdisciplinary discipline, it is much more complex, richer than what we have in modern economics, contemporary economics. And then politics, certainly it is a clear example of interdisciplinary knowledge. Now, the new ones in our times, all right, is at least in terms of the fact that we create new terms. It doesn't mean that the ideas embodied in these new examples were absent from Islamic civilization. Right? So let's say ecology, for example. So we think that ecology is a new area of study because a new term has been created, all right? But in Islamic civilization, the issues that are currently discussed in modern ecology were also discussed by philosophers of science. Let's say, for example, in the writings of Ikhwan as-Safa, the Fraternity of Purity. There are a lot of issues, there are a lot of concepts related to current ecology, right? But these are the new ones, and very, very important one: ecology, environmental study, governance study, study of governance, which is an emerging field, all right? That was, of course, I mean, discussed in the political science in Islamic civilization. Governance study, the study of governance was discussed under political science, all right? And then we have gender studies, now very popular, and then very popular, and then civilizational studies. So these are some examples. Okay, now this is the crux of the matter that I would like to discuss this one actually. Yeah? To me, I mean, if you can understand what the philosophical principles of that I would like to discuss, what I call the philosophical principles. First, the idea of ontological dimension of interdisciplinary knowledge. To talk about interdisciplinary knowledge is to talk about the ontological dimension. All right. Why? Well, in every discipline, there must be a subject matter or the objects of study, all right? When we define when we define a particular science, we always identify the subject matter. Okay, that science studies what? That branch of knowledge is studying what? So this what being studied, called the objects of study. So in interdisciplinary knowledge, which involve several disciplines, we are going to have composite objects of study. So in a sense, yes, it is more demanding, more engaging, because the object of study are composite nature, composite in the sense that the objects do not come from the same level of ontological reality, all right? But different objects. So, for example, when we study living organism, it's not the same as studying these physical entities, right? There are philosophical issues here. The modern philosophy of science try to reduce even the living organisms to kind of the physics and chemistry. So to reduce the study of something complex into physics and chemistry. But in Islamic, say in classical biology, in Islamic biology, which is basically a soul biology, which is based on the idea of soul. Now, when we talk about soul, yes, the common notion is soul, but ontologically, plant soul, animal soul, and human soul, they are of different qualities. They are not of the same quality. They are all different in quality, and therefore that's this we mean by ontological dimension, right? So we want to, so in other words, in a particular interdisciplinary field of study, we may be dealing with these objects of study that come from different levels of reality. And the question we have to ask is whether this is going to have any impact on the nature of that knowledge. Now, this brings me to the question of hierarchy of ideas or entities and relations under study. We have no choice, or we cannot escape from talking about hierarchy of ideas, meaning that the meanings of those ideas are not of the same level, not of the, in terms of significance, or in terms even the content, the meaning of a particular idea. So when we talk about the idea of human being, the idea of being human, that cannot be the same. In terms of content, it cannot be the same as the idea, what do you call, let's say, are the living organisms, non-human living organism. Yeah. To that we have the ability to think of this kind of hierarchy of ideas. I've discussed this in relation to knowledge. I've discussed in my book, actually, my book, Classification of Knowledge in Islam, is talking a lot about these ideas, about the ideas that I'm talking this morning. Now, the second thing next to ontological dimension is methodological dimension. All right, the methodological dimension of interdisciplinary knowledge. After we understand the nature of the ontological reality of the objects of study, all right, now we have to talk. There are implications for the way we study this. Yeah? This is important to emphasize. Right? There is a big difference in terms of methodology between studying issues in a particular science and then in other words, the kind of methods we use in interdisciplinary field of study. There cannot just be one method, one uniform method that is applicable. There are several methods. Now, what does that mean? The employment of multiple methodologies of study. Let me repeat, interdisciplinarity demands the employment of multiple methods of study. So those who want to develop, those who are interested in developing kind of interdisciplinary studies, all right, to solve a particular problem, then they have to ask themselves, now, all right, what should be the different methods appropriate to the complexity of the interdisciplinary studies concern? That means we have to certain kind of frame of mind. Now, but the important thing to guide us, very, very important, we should always bear in mind the idea of unity of knowledge, which is very much emphasized in Islam. All right? Islam emphasized the idea of unity of knowledge. Why? Because it is the application of the principle of unity of God, La ilaha illallah, divine unity. That is the most fundamental principle in Islam, the unity of God. And therefore, a corollary of that is the idea of unity of knowledge. So that's why in Islamic civilization, the Muslim scholars, Muslim scientists, never thought of the kind of imagine that there could be a conflict between two different branches of knowledge. There cannot be, because the unity of knowledge. It is in the West. It is in the modern West. The problem is in the modern West. We are having problem now because we follow the West. There's a problem, including in the field of knowledge. So in the field of knowledge, we follow the modern Western epistemology. We follow the theory of knowledge of the West. So when the West decided to dissect knowledge, to divide knowledge, and not only that, they also to say that the arts and the sciences are opposed to each other. So in the modern Western knowledge culture, right, the kind of this separation or the conflict even between the arts and the sciences, between us and the humanities is there. But and therefore there is a problem in dealing with interdisciplinarity. But it should be no problem. Say in Islam, for example, the students of the Sharia, all right. Let's say the students who want to study halal food, for example, under the Sharia, and there should be no problem to study also that from the perspective of science, of physics, chemistry, biology. There was a kind of readiness on the part of the Muslim mind to discuss interdisciplinarity. All right. So just to sum up here, in other words, the ontological dimension, talking about the reality in the natural world, the reality in the human society. Therefore, that gives rise to the kind of the methodological dimension that is appropriate to the nature of the reality. All right, next. All right, what sort of frame of mind is needed? We have demands on it. If we are talking about interdisciplinarity in the pursuit of knowledge, then there are demands on us. And the most important demand here is on our mind. Is our mind prepared to face these demands, these issues? So I said, what sort of frame of mind is needed? Yes, first of all, we need a mind that integralizes and not compartmentalizes. So in mind, our mind, you know, of course this is a part, because I'm not saying that we shouldn't divide knowledge into different components. No, I don't mean that, but anyway, the mind should not only, in a sense, divides, but also unites. So integrates. In other words, we need a mind that has the capacity to integrate things and not simply to compartmentalize into smaller components. We need a mind that is thinking holistically, all right? The ability to look at the whole and not simply the parts. This is about this question. Human wisdom, thinkers from different civilizations have thought about this. All right. In other words, our mind, yes, is able to look at different parts of a particular thing. We have one whole thing. Any entity that is whole, that is a whole. All right. But if you want to study that entity, we may look at from two angles. One is to look it as a whole and to look at the different parts. Now, it is said that in philosophy that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So if we break up an entity into its different components, all right, we get knowledge of that. We get knowledge about its component. But if you want to put back, all those different components to make it whole again, that whole cannot be considered as equal to the sum of its parts, because there is another element that enables us to make it whole, and that thing that makes it whole is not one of the parts. All right, this is important from the perspective of science. Therefore, we need to think holistically, the ability to look at the whole. So when you want to produce a particular interdisciplinary study, combining several disciplines, but the end result of that is something greater than just those ideas from the different fields of study. The other one is keen on the idea of interrelatedness of things. So our mind, our mind should be trained to look at the idea of interrelatedness of things. In reality, all things are interrelated. Yes, we can select a particular part of that for our study, but the idea of interrelatedness must be there. The other one is our mind should be at ease with synthetic way of thinking. Right? Synthetic way of thinking, not analytic. There are two different ways of thinking, synthetic and analytic. And the other one, of course, in Islamic terms, all this constitute what we call the Tawhidic way of thinking. The Tawhidic way of thinking is holistic, it is inclusive, not exclusive, it is both, especially it is synthetic as well as analytic. So the challenge to our contemporary mind is that right now we see a lot of analysis, but little synthesis. We are quite good at doing analysis, but we are poor at doing synthesis. But the Tawhidic knowledge culture wants to balance, to strike a good balance between analysis and synthesis. I think our knowledge culture should be like that. All right, my concluding remarks. Interdisciplinarity is an important feature of Islamic knowledge culture. So I'm suggesting that the history of interdisciplinary studies in Islamic culture should be made better known to the contemporary world. So right at this moment, we are interested to promote interdisciplinary studies, then I think it's good to know our history, the history of this in Islamic civilization. So when we study Islamic civilization, the history of Islamic civilization, we should also study the history of the knowledge culture and the place of interdisciplinarity in that history. All right, and I would say that the flourishing of interdisciplinary knowledge would be a good thing for humanity. It's not bad. Yeah, whatever merits, whatever benefits, whatever success that we have from the analytical approach, I think the point is there's something missing. There's something that's missing that contributes to our problem, and that is the issue of interdisciplinarity. So thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Prof. Now I would like to open the floor for a Q&A session, and I see there's already a few questions in the chat box, yeah, Prof? So I will read it out. Okay, the first question, dear Prof, how are we going to avoid being frozen in the past while studying our Islamic past tradition?
Quite sure what the question is. Frozen in the past? Why should we be frozen in the past? You mean frozen, something kind of...
Probably like being dwelt in the past teaching while studying the past tradition, probably, Prof?
You know, I mean, from the viewpoint of Islamic philosophy or Islamic teaching, the past is important to be known. History is important. We don't forget our history, all right? Yes, there are those aspects of our past which we should set aside, but it will be wrong to assume that all in the past is of no value. It's of no value to us. You know, that kind of philosophy that, you know, let us forget the past is more kind of under the influence of theory of evolution. That is the evolution of human mind. Because to talk about, well, because human beings, human mind is progressing, always moving towards what is better and better. Right? So something in the past, therefore, are worthless. But this is the wrong understanding of the wrong philosophy. It's a wrong philosophy. And furthermore, empirically also, it is not true that we are getting better and better. On the contrary, we are getting worse and worse. All right? So that is important. So if we use our mind critically, the point is, let us use our mind critically. Look, in the past, Islamic civilization has cultivated knowledge which is considered as knowledge and wisdom that is considered to be useful at all times. Yes, there is such a knowledge, in fact, and such wisdom we should continue to cultivate. All right, we should continue to cultivate because it is useful at all times, no matter under what age, under what era. All right, no matter what the state of technology is, there are certain knowledge that is always useful. It is knowledge about our humanness, about our humanity. All right, which does not depend on the technology and science. Right? So that knowledge we must always maintain. But if you look for knowledge that changes with time in terms of value, yes, of course. We in terms of technology and knowledge of technology, we cannot be using the same the primitive level of technology as before. All right. That's absurd. That's absurd. So I think when we say frozen in the past, be careful. What do you mean by being frozen in the past? The past can both freeze and can both make you dynamic. You have to look which one, right? Which aspect. So that's why we study Islamic civilization. We study Islamic civilization because we want to learn useful lessons from the past, right? Which will guide us to the future. Without the past, we cannot handle the present, let alone to conceive or to have a future vision. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof, for the clarification. We have another question in the chat box. Yeah? How do we convince the academic community who are very highly specialized to embark on an interdisciplinary study?
Well, I think the first thing is just simply I would request the person. All right, that person must be studying or must be teaching or must be doing research in a particular field of study. Right. First of all, just to check whether his or her field of study is already interdisciplinary in nature or not, because it's the actually, despite that people don't use the interdisciplinary before, the point is knowledge is expanding, and as knowledge expands, issue of interdisciplinarity cannot be avoided. All right. Now let's see now why is ecology important? Yeah. Okay. Someone studying ecology. All right. But it doesn't mean that that kind of specialization is wrong. What I mean the kind of specialization, let's say, take the example of science. Right? So that a person is doing biology, and biology is already, as I said, is already interdisciplinary. I mean, you cannot do biology without knowing some physics, without knowing some chemistry. All right. So it's not pure science that is not interdisciplinary. Right? But still, we have people, biologists, say botanists, for example, studying on a plant. They know very well. They specialize in that. Go on. You can go on specializing in that, but don't forget the link of your discipline with other disciplines. In Islamic epistemology, there is the concept of what you call is neighboring disciplines. Concept of neighboring discipline. You should pay attention to your neighbors. Just like in society, now we live in a particular area. There we have neighbors. We have to be good neighbors. All right. So of course there are more distant neighbors and close neighbors. Close neighbors have more priority. There's hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, we should take care of our neighborhood. In other words, the 40 houses, the area of the 40 houses nearest to us. Then that is about taking care of our neighbors, be good to our neighbors. Now, in the field of knowledge, the same thing. In the same knowledge. So, if you are doing your biology, for example, what are your neighboring disciplines? You have to take care. All right. Well, even if you don't believe in soul, for example, you have to your neighboring discipline like the cosmology, for example. Cosmology, the knowledge of the cosmos, knowledge of the natural world as a whole. In other words, natural science in general. So if you are doing economics, what is your neighboring discipline? Your neighboring is political science, of course. Yeah, ethics. Ethics is your neighboring discipline. So that's why those in Western universities like Oxford and so on, they want to do BA, to do political science. They must take economics. They must take ethics. These are all related disciplines. So a good university will always do that. All right. When you want to produce graduates in a particular discipline, what about knowledge of the neighboring discipline? Is that also being taught? So the kind of mind of the graduates that we produce will depend on what are the other branches of knowledge apart from their own field of specialization. I think the trend now, people don't do that anymore. Specialization in the old way is out of thing ordinary. It's no longer it's no longer the way. It's no longer the no. People is always every now the trend is to expanding our discipline, our mind. Because why? Because it is in the nature of the ontological world there. At least in the world of jobs, opportunities in the profession, yeah. So let's say, for example, about medicine, yeah. Why is it that, for example, in the West, in America, in Australia, in UK, many medical doctors, the conventional medicine, they always add something extra. They want to know also about alternative medicine, because they will become better doctors by knowing also other forms of medicine. That is the trend. That is the trend. In the past, it was the norm. Yeah, it was the norm. So it is our time that things got out of hand, but now we realize no, we cannot just simply specialize in that old sense. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Prof, for the answer. Okay, for more questions, can be directed directly to Prof through email, or Prof, maybe later you can just go through the chat box to answer a few more questions. Yeah, Prof?
Okay, thank you, inshallah.
Okay, Prof, actually our Dato Vice Chancellor couldn't make it this morning, so he sends his warm regards to you.
Okay, thank you. Salam to him. Okay. Now, of course, I see here, I must say, please give me that. Assalamualaikum, Professor Amin Abdullah. I'm happy to see your face. I've not seen you for a long time. And that was Professor Shukri Langpute. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Assalamualaikum.
Thank you again, Prof. Thank you again, Prof, for the keynote speech. Waalaikumsalam. We hope to see you again very soon.
Inshallah.
All right.